obvious markers that I've been seeing over the last, I would say the last year. This has been coming on my radar ever since Demartravian Reed in Mississippi came up hanging from a tree outside of the university there. And it looks like we may have, the resurgence of some strange fruit activity, aka lynching of black folk in America right now. Um, and it's a deep thing for me. I mean, this is a very deeply traumatizing, deeply sad issue to even have to be talking about. But with the recent news of Nolan Wells and of the young woman yesterday that was found hanging in Jackson County, Mississippi, in her neighborhood, that they have not slapped the suey um, on, So in other words, they're not trying to say that she did it to herself, which is a first, because all of these hangings and things that have been taking place, they've been trying to claim that they were self-imposed situations, that black folk are actually going and hanging themselves from trees, basically. So they found a young woman in Jackson County yesterday in her neighborhood behind a vacant house, a young mother hanging from a tree, supposedly. 2 weeks ago in Charlotte, North Carolina, they found a 16-year-old girl hanging in a very awkward, position that didn't make no sense, with a small little chair next to her, a child-sized chair hanging from a tree behind the church, and so on and on and on. There's so many things that we have to discuss and talk about and be real about. I think as people from the U.S., black folk from the U.S. that have gone through all of the historical horrors, then to have these demons be emboldened to kind of come back and have a resurgence of this stuff because of who is in power on the federal level. And it's really disgusting, to be honest, the fact that we still have to deal with and even cohabitate with these beings. So I want to talk about that here. I'm gonna see if anybody comes on. But yeah, the strange fruit phenomenon is back. I mean, for those of you who aren't familiar with what strange fruit is, it comes from a song that Billie Holiday remade. The song was written by a Caucasian man back in like the 40s. I forget what his name is, but Billie Holiday, the great jazz singer, remade it, and it was one of the things that attracted a lot of hatred and a lot of harassment, and them going out of their way to try to destroy Billie Holiday, because strange fruit is a metaphor for the hanging of all the beautiful brown folks that were found in trees, thousands of people all through the South, and especially in the state of Mississippi. And so Billie Holiday suffered a lot of backlash, industry tampering. They sent agents to her. They literally did everything they could to destroy her, hence her early death that they claim was, whatever, drug related. It was because she was targeted, because she had the understanding that, she had to use her platform to let people know about, and not let people know because people knew. What I mean? We didn't have Wi-Fi and internet and all that back then, but people knew what was going on. They knew that these beings, these, I can't even call them people, were going around and just exposing people with brown skin to the most horrific tortures anybody could ever imagine having to go through, and then stringing them up for all to see, and celebrating and having barbecues and picnics and all kinds of shit up underneath their hanging bodies. I mean, this is like a really dark thing to even have to talk about, but this is the reality of America, y'all. This is a reality of the country that everybody's bragging about being so fantastic and great, and oh, but I can have a great life, I can make lots of money, and have a nice shiny house that's made of cardboard, and I can do all of these things. But yet, here we are hearing more and more, and it's been a lot of women too, more and more about people, getting their lives taken in very strange ways, and the officials not even taking a day or two to actually look into what happened, just immediately saying, oh, they did it to themselves. How convenient, right? They did it to themselves. So, this is the kind of energy that we're dealing with here. This and so one of the things for me is that I trying to help people to understand that it's okay if you want to stay in America and you think it's okay. These are just isolated incidents. It's no big deal. I don't know. I mean, for me, pattern recognition is really important. I think pattern recognition is one of the skills that has allowed me to always navigate myself and my children to safety and out of harm's way, through all the different things we've been through. The pattern recognition of seeing more and more on a regular basis of us hearing about people who are being hung, that are found hanging from trees, y'all, throughout the South, and particularly in Mississippi lately. It's undeniable. It's truly undeniable. And I see people are starting to come on now, but I'll just backtrack a little bit. Basically, just yesterday, a young woman, they're being very vague about this in the media right now, but a young woman in Jackson County, Mississippi, in a little quiet neighborhood with a lot of elders in it, a neighborhood where no crime ever happened. Everybody was totally shocked. It's mostly us in the neighborhood, though, brown folk. They found a young woman, a young mother, body hanging from a tree in a backyard, who it looked like she had been brutalized. Okay. Totally traumatized her, the community, everybody that's had to interact with this situation. And this is just, 2 weeks after they found a young 16-year-old girl in Charlotte in the same position behind the church. So, I mean, it is what it is. Everybody, it's like we have to open our eyes and start to understand that we have an issue on our hand, and these beings are emboldened because we know who's in charge right now in the country, and they don't give a F about us or about rights or about humanity or nothing like that. No one's humanity. So it's like they sure not going to be checking for what's happening to black people, and these beings are just emboldened to do whatever they want to do. So, for those of you who have been following the Nolan Wells case in point, this young man comes up, they don't even lift us a finger, it don't look like, to try to investigate what has happened to that child. Just automatically assume that he just fell off the boat and or whatever, that he swam out and got caught up in some currents and died. Now, we know it's not an automatic assumption. We know that they're playing games and they're hiding things and doing a whole cover up of the situation, because a lot of folks don't understand that the Klan is alive and active in Mississippi. A lot of people think this was just some hoodoo, voodoo. This is something that was, a horrible thing that was happening in the 50s and 60s and earlier than that. And we got that sorted out now. No, that's not the case. Okay, that's why a lot of people know to just stay out of Mississippi in general if you have brown skin. But there's a lot of us down there, and a lot of the ones that are still down there and living have had to do things mentally, gymnastics, to try to act like everything is okay down there now, when we know it is not okay. And that they recently found a bunch of Klansmen, Klan, KKK stuff in a police station out there just recently. Okay, so we know what's going on, and we also know what direction to potentially point in terms of who are doing these things. Very well could be officials doing it. So what does that tell you? You know what I mean? Now you're finding people popping up, hanging from trees left and right through there. Now the young girl, the 16-year-old, was found in North Carolina, in Charlotte to be exact. So for everybody who's thinking that moving to big cities in the South is okay, you'll be all right as long as you're in the city, not so much. Okay? It's a lot going on, y'all. I don't know. All I could say is that, I feel like we have to open our eyes, stop being in denial, stop thinking this is, pre-COVID, when things were still trashy, but I guess somewhat manageable for people and all of that. I mean, the U.S. has been on a downward spiral for a long time, since its inception, been on a downward spiral since it came to be. because everything that it was based on has been genocidal and racially, motivated and just pure evil. And so we're watching the real decline of the nation, and these things are coming back online, y'all. And I just worry about folks. It's like sometimes I be wanting to come home, I'm like, I'm from the US. I live in Brazil, but I do have times where I want to come home. I've been away for a long time. I can't see family and I haven't really been able to do anything. But I just have not been willing to subject my child, my children to all of the trauma that you have to just kind of blink away and act like it isn't impacting you in order for you to live and exist in that place. Okay, it's a lot of trauma people are exposed to. I don't know how folks are doing it. Nobody, nowhere in the world is perfect, but I tell you, I have zero exposure to this type of racial violence in my movements here in Brazil. Does that mean it's not a racist country? Yeah, hell yeah, it's a racist ass country. They definitely keep their stuff more under wraps here. But, out there, you are being subjected to all kinds of stuff that is the unknown, that is of the chaos realm. And so for me, I'm grateful, for discernment. I'm also grateful for pattern recognition skills. And I wanted to bring it up to everyone who didn't know about the recent hanging that had took place yesterday. That would, the body that was found yesterday. And these things are ramping up. From Nolan Wells, maybe he would, but they found something around Nolan Wells's neck. We don't know what happened to him. They sure haven't said what happened to him. We do not know. Okay. And now we're finding young women. There was another young woman in Miami area about a month or so ago, y'all. This shit is real. So I just hope everybody is using their thinking skills, their pattern recognition skills, and considering ways that they can, secure their safety in all ways. Whether that means always making sure you're moving in groups, and also just making sure. I mean, no children. If you are old enough to have a firearm at this point, and you are in America, you should definitely never go nowhere without a firearm. I mean, like I was watching a video yesterday and a sister was talking about how she lives overseas. She lives in Thailand, but she had come back to visit. And she was like, when it's time to go do stuff like Walmart and things like that, oh, I know I need my firearm. Like she literally takes her firearm wherever she needs to when she's in the States because it's just like that. I personally am glad I don't live somewhere where I have to live like that. But if you are there and that's what you're doing, then you have no luxury to be walking around without that right now. Not with them stringing folks up throughout the South. I mean, we talking about Miami, Mississippi. We're talking about all the way up to Charlotte. Where else is it going to be taking place? So I mean, they've had lynchings out in Texas that I remember over the years. It was many years ago. I remember a really nasty couple of them. These things have not stopped. This stuff is still happening. We can't be closing our eyes to it. It is the strange fruit phenomenon that Billie Holiday sang about. It's the reality that these demons are emboldened to come back online with this shit in this time because they know there will be no repercussions for their actions as there was not 60, 70 years ago. And then they feel like they can come out and be their true selves. Okay. And so we have to be realistic about how we're going to intermingle with this situation because we are still cohabitating with these beings. I can't call them people. We still have to move with these beings around us and be able to do so safely. So if you have children, I would not be letting my children go out and do nothing, unsupervised. It is not time for that. We're talking about, all the way up into the teens, up into, it just in general, no child should be wandering around by themselves. That no child should be wandering around without, some other adults around them. It's not time for that. Even adults shouldn't even be moving on their own right now, especially if you're in the South. But believe me, I don't trust nowhere in the U.S. Okay, because them creatures is all over that place. And then, you know, for those who are looking for other options and are truly looking to maybe do something else, considering other places to move to, other places that they can be where they won't have to be dealing with all of this mess. There are a lot of countries where you just will not be subject to this kind of racial violence. You just will not be. And so those considerations are really important too. I can think of several. I mean, some of the ones that people I think are having the most success with as of late are, people seem to be really doing well in Southeast Asia, Black folk. It's particularly in Thailand. Some of them are enjoying Bali. Malaysia even has been coming up lately. I had a girlfriend, a good girlfriend of mine, who lived in Malaysia for 8 years and raised a good portion of her children's lives in Malaysia, and they did well. That was years ago, but I am seeing a resurgence of interest in Malaysia for places to go. I really feel Southeast Asia. I'm someone who is like Brazil for me, Southeast Asia, maybe Kenya. There are specific countries that I feel like the quality of life will meet my needs to a degree. Unfortunately, me and my children spent a lot of time, many years, on the island of St. Croix and kind of moving around the Caribbean a little bit. And because of who's in charge in the U.S. right now, Big T, because of all of the death and destruction that they are wielding all over the planet right now, they have done so much stuff to try to oppress and repress the people of the Caribbean, and are really attacking. They have vendettas for certain leaders on certain islands, especially Antigua and Grenada. They are doing so many things to impede the progress of the Caribbean right now that I wouldn't suggest going in that direction. I can't think of an island that I would suggest, but I would say that, Southeast Asia is a good look. Again, Kenya, I know a lot of Black folk that are doing quite well in Kenya, have a good quality of life. The social life is hitting. Everything that you would want is on point out there mostly. And you live in a beautiful, nature-esque country that respects nature. So that could be a really good, that's probably the highest on my list of go-tos if I decide to leave Brazil ever. And then, some people like Central and South America and the Latin America thing. I really don't. I only like Brazil. I've lived in other countries in Central America. I'm not a Central America fan at all, but it's pretty. But yeah, no, I wouldn't. I don't know about that for Black folk. I don't know. But so all I would say is, well, it would be time now, as we see racial violence starting to, really pick up speed and research. I would be looking at options, especially if you have children, especially if you have, I can't even say boys because they've been hanging up girls all over the place. So, I would just be looking at some options, some potential places that you can maybe shift to if things really start to escalate. Because you got to think, you really have to have a plan, and you really have to have some things in place if you're going to be out there long term, as this stuff continues to peak and to kind of gain traction, because these folks, they feel unstoppable. They are diabolical and they feel unstoppable. They feel like they can get away with anything. Again, look at the Nolan Wells thing. All right, they literally, this crazy situation took place, and they didn't even lift a finger, barely, that we know of, to really get the truth of the matter and bring that forward to the public, knowing how much the millions of people are watching that situation and want the truth, including the poor parents, right? So that's when we know they don't give a F, okay? And then we're finding that that clan is alive and well in Mississippi, and that is the primary place where we are hearing about these lynchings and these things starting to take place again. And it's really sad, because it's like, beyond the physical horror and the damage and the horror of the actual act, we also have to be, viewing this as a people in our vision, taking it in our minds and trying to figure out how to process this amount of traumatization. And this is why so many of us are saying, leaving people alone, stay away from them folks, telling their children, do not move around with them. Do not move around with them in groups where you the token. Don't do none of that. And it's so sad. I mean, I'm from California, so I grew up in a very interracial experience. It was very, very racist in California, but I did grow up with friends that were Latino, that were Asian, that were, sweet people. And so I didn't grow up, being racially minded in that way. But I did know that there was a lot of prejudice that I would face especially as a brown skinned black woman. And so couldn't stand California. And then to come up and, live all over the country and see that the whole damn country is the same was quite an experience. But, with my children, I have raised them, kind of similar to where I was raised. I mean, we just kind of vibe with who we vibe with. But now, as things are shifting, if I was in the US, I would be very, very concerned about my son or my children moving around with too many Caucasian people, because it just seems like with the pattern recognition again, we're seeing that for some reason all these children, because it's more than the lynchings, there's been all kinds of killings with children who have been, and youth that have been around groups of Caucasians, and for some reason they're the one that's singled out to do something extra, or to end up, being killed in the situation where everyone else walks away alive. I mean, there have been so many episodes over this year, over 1 year. And so for me, I would be really, really trying to keep my kids from moving with them like that at this point. It's very sad, but we can't trust it. We cannot trust it right now. And it's about being safe, not trying to be overly friendly with people that you don't feel like you can fully trust. So yeah, strange fruit, like truly. There was also some episodes. I heard about 3 or 4 episodes where there was, for one, this young man down in Texas had went swimming with a couple of his Caucasian friends, went out to a river or a lake. He was a swimmer on the swim team, so this wasn't somebody who couldn't swim. They try to act like black folk can't swim and all this extra shit. And they all went in. He didn't come back up. They claimed they heard him yelling for help, but then all of a sudden, I guess he went down and didn't come back up. So what did they do? Instead of going and try to get help, they took all of his clothes he had left on the shore and went and tried to hide them. Okay, the family's like, what the hell? Everybody's trying to figure out what happened there. I think Ben Crump is on that one, because it's just such I don't know if he's on that one or the one with the young man who was with his Caucasian friends, young little brother up in Kentucky, and said they were playing Russian roulette, right? Because that's a smart thing to do as a group. And he shot himself. And then they went and hid the gun and gave the police a different gun. You know what I'm saying? This is a kind of stupidity. So it's like for some reason, they're always the one that's getting singled out, to have some mishap. Okay? And I mean, the devilry, it goes deep, because not only is all this stuff happening, but with this Nolan Wells case, the mama now, because these beings don't want to bring the truth forward about what happened to that youth, and they know what it was. That's why they kept certain organs and did all these different things so that the independent autopsy couldn't take place properly. But not only did they do all of that, but now they're coming after the mother, specifically the mother, trying to defame her, trying to make her lose her job, trying to humiliate her and force her to back off, because they don't want her to continue pushing for answers about what happened to her son. So I mean, these are the beings we're dealing with. That's why I said we in some different times right now. This is some different stuff. We really have to just be very, very vigilant at this time, is what I would say, because it just doesn't make any sense, for this much mishap to be happening, for these many children to be losing their lives. So many children, man. It's just too much. This is why I stay the hell from around there, because I'm just not about to be freaking out every time my child walks out the house that something horrific is going to happen. And that's exactly the state that I would be in if I decided to stay in the US right now. And that's just not how I want to live. Oh, he finally comes to get his clothes? No. So, for those of you who are interested in moving abroad or thinking about it, at least have a secondary plan, a plan B together. You don't have to move abroad, and you don't have to stay if you go. But I would be very, very watchful in the U.S., especially with all of these hangings and things going on. Because if they try to ramp that back up to the levels of like where it was back in the 50s and back when my grandparents were growing up and having to watch their backs growing up in Georgia and all this stuff, that is, you really want to question having, especially children in that environment. And there are so many places you can go where these things are not happening. That's the thing. People don't understand. They think the whole world is jacked up like the US. I'm like, no, it's not. I've been to a lot of countries, never seen anything like the US. It is just terrorism. It is just a terrorist state, especially for brown people. So, brown, black, whatever you want to call us. So for me, I would at least have a plan B. I mean, my God, there's just no reason to be living under that level of terroristic activity and acting like it's normal. And, for those of you, I don't know if any of you that watch are interested in coming this way. We do help people to move to Brazil and support them in their processes. You can check out any of my links below. We have a lot. Yeah, just to support people as they plan their moves and also to support people who are moving abroad with children in general. So that is something that we do because I've done it a lot. I've always been trying to stay away from America. And so, with that being said, I have barely even lived in the United States over the last, I don't know, over 10 years now, basically. So, I can help people. I know the process. I know what you need to be thinking about when you're moving with children, especially if they're underage and things like that, and can just be a support system. But yeah, what I would say is make sure you have your plan B right now. That you have your escape plan, you know where you can go if shit hits the fan, because it look like it's starting to. And this is not to raise up any kind of racial division or anything like that. But we do have to be realistic. I mean, this stuff is getting more and more concerning. You're seeing more and more brazen activity, brazen behavior from these beings where they are feeling comfortable to go out and do crazy things and know that they will be supported by the system, that the judicial system, the police system, all of these systems will be behind them instead of the actual victims. That's why you see all of this projection and trying to defame and to ruin the lives of the family of Nolan Wells, for instance, instead of actually bringing the truth to the table. Because at the end of the day, they stick together. And that's something that I feel like we need to be learning about, is sticking together. They stick together. They're going to protect each other, and at the end of the day, we don't know to the levels of what all of that even was. Because remember, we don't know what happened. And so it could very well have been something that was planned out or ritualized. And that is the nature a lot of people don't understand with the actual hangings and the lynchings that would take place throughout the South over, the early mid 1900s. Those were ritual sacrifices. People are not understanding that these beings are not regular people. Like, they deal with some really, really dark forces. And then those are the forces that work through them. And so these are sacrifices for them. These are rituals for them. That's why they did so much ritualistic stuff around the bodies when they had them. It's hard to look at, I know, because we're in a society right now where we kind of have like a certain amount of amnesia about that time frame and don't realize that's their ancestors that was doing that, or some of them are still alive. That's who these people are, and they wasn't never moving like no regular human beings. So this is what we're still dealing with. This is their children, their grandchildren doing the same behaviors. Okay. Is it on the level of what it was? Not at this time, but they've had other means. What happened, I was doing some studying about Mississippi and how, once they got the electric chair and all of that, then they stopped with the outright stuff and the lynchings that they were so known for down there, and just started, putting people through that prison system and get them to that electric chair whenever they can. Okay, so they switched up the game, but it doesn't mean it's not the same. It's not the same mentality, the same people. It's the same folk. It's the same folks. So we really need to be careful. I really want y'all to be careful. I'm blessed where I am. We live in Brazil. We just don't have those experiences here. Not to put nothing past anyone because it is a racially divided society. It is. It's just that it manifests differently here. But so we're very careful in general. But yeah, get your plan together. If you can potentially at least have a plan B, a plan C, some countries you're looking at, do the research, find out, get a sense of whether that place would work for you, for your family, get a feel for it. You can do that through looking at Facebook groups. You can do that through Reddit. You can find ways to touch in and tap in and feel whether that particular locale will work for you. I'm highly suggesting for Black folk to go, if they don't come down this way to Brazil or somewhere where it's pretty chill. I am highly suggesting that we go to Southeast Asia at this time because it's just right now it seems like that's where we're getting the most bang for our buck and the best treatment, not having to deal with a whole lot of extra racial tension. Especially Thai people are known for being quite egalitarian, quite kind. um, and so a lot of us are doing quite well in those areas. So I would highly suggest to people to be looking in that direction at this point, or somewhere like Kenya. But Kenya's far. I mean, both of those places you'd have to kind of be working in a different time zone if you're someone that is keeping American work hours for your business or job. But I would just say be really, really painstaking about putting a little plan together. Shit, let ChatGPT or whatever it is help you, but put a plan together, a plan B, an escape plan for yourself, so that you can move with in an expeditious way if you need to, if things really, really get hot, because it just seems like they are stoking something really, really dark in the US. And maybe that's what these things are about, trying to stoke this kind of racial tension and violence. The thing is, we just are not prone to that. We have a lot of black on black violence and things in our community based on the poverty and all of that, but we're just not prone to just outright attacking and doing stuff to groups of people just based upon something stupid like what color their skin is. So it's really not our style. And so this is why we have been very kind of humbled with a lot of this stuff, because there's just a beast there that we're dealing with that we have to be realistic about. So yeah, I am definitely um, wanting to, just express my support to all of us out there that are trying to make a plan to get the hell out, and let y'all know you can check me if you're coming in this direction. If you're moving to the Caribbean, I've lived in Europe, I've lived in Africa, so I have done a lot of moving around, and done it with youth and children. That's the thing. It's a different beast than solo traveling. So if you are a family person and you just want to be encouraged about being able to make moves and have a plan in place so that you are straight, so you're good no matter where you are, I can help. But yeah, y'all, please look into some of what's been going on. I think a lot of us are not tuned into that side of the internet. We don't realize how many deaths have taken place under mysterious circumstances of brown and black children and young people in particular in the last year. Very much centered, a lot of them centered in the Mississippi area, but we also have the Miami one. Again, we have the North Carolina, we have Texas, Kentucky. Shit is going down, and we need to be aware and know how to move, in a secure way at this day and time. Make sure you got your carry, you got your license, you're able to carry, and I wouldn't go nowhere without that. I wouldn't go anywhere without it. And for me, I shoot, and I have done some shooting, and I know the importance of it if you're living in America, but I don't want no life where I gotta walk around like that, and I don't feel that here. But in the States, there's no way in the world I would be comfortable out there moving around without it. So you guys, you have to be practical, and smart at this point. Does anyone have any questions? I don't know if anyone's on here right now. Anyone have any questions? Yeah, so those of you, right quick, I'm changing my clothes over. But for those of you who just came on, we were talking about, the strange fruit phenomenon. I'm sure a lot of you know about what that is, and all of the lynchings that have been coming into play here recently, including one that just, a sister that was just found, I believe it was yesterday, in Jackson County, Mississippi. Yesterday, a young woman that, was embedded in her neighborhood, that wasn't known for causing no problems, a young mother. So it's a lot of women lately, I've noticed it. And, with the increase of all this red pill and this, we have the misogynoir and all of the hatred towards women that's been coming on deck. Now you're seeing that it's a lot of women that are ending up hanging from trees right now. I mean, it's just disgusting. Like, what are we even dealing with? But this is what we're dealing with. And so for those of you who are in the South in particular, and that's including Florida, because shit's been going down out there too, you really need to be thinking about, what your safety plan is. Period. What's your safety plan? How are you going to make sure you and your youth are safe? How are you going to be strapped and protected at all time? We have to be a little more gully, a little more ready for whatever at this point, and stop being so humble and not wanting to do nothing, and also so humble to them when they don't got no kind of respect for our bodies and safety. Okay? And that's the reality. And this is why I don't live out there, because I don't like living in a situation where I always feel like I got to be on edge. This is why I don't be around there. But for those who are out there, you have to protect yourself. You know what I'm saying? You've got to protect yourself at this point. So, right quick in my Apple Pay. So please stay on.